Welcome to the Heart of Dating podcast. Hey, it's Kait. I'm so glad you could join us this week as we try to untangle the ever so ambiguous world of dating as a Christian. Over here on Heart of Dating, we get real as we answer some tough questions and uncover transformative ways to approach Christian dating. Oh, and you better believe we have some laughs along the way, because last time I checked, the struggle is #real. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. What's up, everyone? It's your girl, Kait here. We are in a season break, but we're still bringing back some awesome Heart of Dating episodes while you wait for season 11 to come out later this summer. And this episode, we're talking about, is making out a sin? Yes, we are. My friend JD Rodgers came on the podcast with me, and this was a really fun and honest conversation. And here's the thing. We don't want to just sit here and tell you what to and to not do. That's not a fun thing, because you guys have gotten that so much already. So instead, we tell you about our convictions and what we think would potentially be wisest, but also, hey, we want you to take this stuff. We want you to bring it to God. We want you to bring it to your close community, people that know you. And we want you to really assess for yourself what is wise for you. Okay? Now, what's funny is that JD and I recorded this episode before we both met our future spouses. Like, it's so wild. Actually, JD went on his first date with Jenna soon after we recorded this episode. And then I met JJ a few months after this episode launched. So it's wild. Now we're both married. It's just really cool to listen back to this episode where we were both single as a Pringle and talking about, is making out a sin? You know, our favorite question of all time. Well, maybe not our favorite, but certainly a question that we all have probably asked or thought of at some point in dating. Hey, real quick, I want to tell you about a free guide that we have, which is the ultimate guide to long distance dating. Long distance dating is bigger than ever, okay? We have digital dating, people meeting online from around the world. And if you didn't know, me and JJ actually met and did long distance for the first few months of our relationship. We're big fans of long distance, but obviously there are some things you probably need in order to have a healthy long distance relationship. So if you want our ultimate guide to long distance dating, it includes creative date ideas. It includes some guides that will help set you up for success. If you want to get this free guide, you can go to heartofdating.com/resource/the1. That's heartofdating.com/resource/the1. Okay, guys, I am so pumped for this conversation with JD. Let's get into it. You ready?
Yes. Is this the grand finale? Is that how we're going to do this?
The grand finale. Wow. We are ending, y'all. Today, this is so fun, is making out a sin.
Talk about hot take.
Let's just put it out there. You clicked on this because you wanted to know the answer to that question so badly. Right. We know it. But this is the question looming in so many people's minds. Outside of me getting questions about hey, Kait, what about online dating? Hey, Kait, where are all the Christian guys? Probably the two biggest things I get asked. Mm-hmm. It's what about physical boundaries? Whenever we've done anything on physicality, people are clicking.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they want to know. And so let's start it out, JD. What do we think?
Yeah, I would say the reason why people want to know is because there's nothing in scripture that is clear in terms of so what it is clear is we know that sex is designed to be for the wedding bed.
Yes.
It's supposed to be for marriage. And so we do know that line, but there's so many other things that can happen without actual intercourse that people they can start to just make their own rules. Yeah. And that even then can result in a lot of hurt, because anytime you get physical with someone, you are creating strong ties and bonds to them. It just adds another layer of complexity that you're introducing into your relationship.
Absolutely.
So people want to know, how can I do that well and set myself up for success? And so that's why everyone's asking.
And I just want to start by saying, there has been a lot of different shaming narratives about sexuality, and back in the day, especially the purity culture, I Kissed Dating Goodbye and all of that. I just want to go ahead and say, I wrote a chapter in my book, Thank You for Rejecting Me, about sexual shame. And your sexual desire is not bad. It's really beautiful. I talk about that all in chapter 3 of my book. And it is an amazing thing. If you have a sexual drive, sexual desire, awesome. That is a beautiful, godly thing. Now we have to talk about how do we steward that well in dating and then saving whatever that is for us for marriage,
Right.
because that is, like you said, how God intended for it to be. But I do think that we are like, oh my gosh, we're so afraid to even have this conversation because there's been so much shame around the narratives of sex and sexuality and all of that.
Totally. And so if you're looking for one of us to say right now is making out a sin and give you a yes or no answer, you're not going to find it. So sorry.
Sorry about you.
You're not going to find that.
Yeah.
But what you will find is I do believe a lot of times the why or the agenda or the reasoning behind why a person could choose to introduce making out into the relationship could be because of sinful tendencies, which, hey, again, that's not shaming. We are broken humans, like trying to figure this out. So a lot of people right now might just not even be aware that they're doing this. Like, and that's part of growing and like going through the journey and figuring out these interesting nuances of dating. And so what all I'm going to do, Kait, is I think when I disciple guys or even guys that are in the same walk of life as me, and we're like trying to be a Christian man's goal in dating is to first honor God. And as a result of that, honor his child.
Yeah.
And so to honor the woman that we are dating. So we're, one of the ways that you do that is you're constantly talking with guys about, hey, this took place, or hey, we're talking about this. And that's why you get sometimes people decide I'm not kissing until the wedding altar. And like people laugh at that and make fun of that. And I would say, don't do that. You could think
don't make fun of
it. Yeah,
it.
don't make fun of them. Like don't be like, oh my gosh, probably like that might be that man doing the best thing he could do to honor that woman. Because
knowing himself, knowing their relationship, knowing her background, yeah, exactly.
And so he's like, I care about you so much. I'm willing to lay aside my needs to show you how much I take us seriously. That is a brave move. That's not a move to be laughed at. It's a brave move for that man to do that. But I think a lot of people aren't there. They're like, hey, I'm okay with kissing. I'm okay with kissing goodnight. I'm okay with showing affection in that way. Making out though. And I just want to even clarify what making out is. It's like awkward, but let's do it. If the lips are moving and the tongue is involved, you are making out. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we have to clarify. But yes, everybody, this is making out.
A French kiss, some might say. And so,
oh my goodness.
And so, because I think people will be like, well, what is that? Whatever. So. With that, here's the advice I give guys. I always ask them to search their why behind their action. And it's like, hey, why do you need to do that? Or why are you choosing to do that? What are you hoping to gain from that? And a lot of times it's like, well, man, I just want to show her that I care about her. Or man, I need to know if there's like physical chemistry, or she's never kissed someone. And so I don't know if, it's like, hey, I would be hesitant of that why, because that sounds like you're putting a lot of chips into the physical chemistry of that person, and that is not a legitimate reason to know if you should be with someone or not.
Right.
And that's one thing I would say, like check your heart there, because that's just not the thing that's going to sustain your marriage, is how good your physical life is. And
and the other thing actually you just pointed out, which I think a lot of women cling to too. Well, I feel like I want to show them I care about them. And a lot of, women want to do or end up doing physical intimacy with a guy because they're like, I think that's what he wants. So I want to give that to him, and that I want to debunk the fact that, hey, like, we need to not only like try to honor God in this process, like what is honoring also to yourself? What are your own what are your own boundaries for yourself? How do you honor your own body, the temple that God has created? How do you walk that out in dating? Because you just wanting to make out with somebody because you think that's what they want isn't honoring you. Like and we can have our own boundaries personally, like otherwise I'm just doing it because that's what they want me to do, or because I think that's what they need to connect to me. And I think that we need to instead value ourselves and God enough to know that we don't have to do that. Totally.
And then with that, I ask the guy, what are you hoping you receive from this that you don't already have? Like, again, it's just like, it's like putting, how much weight are you putting in this? And it's like, it's just challenging that, which is healthy. Challenging your friends and the decisions they make in their dating life is okay. And it's healthy. There should be more of it. Probably a lot less hurt would happen if people did that more. let's talk about what it does physically to a guy. Because I think for a lot of guys, I can't speak as much for women, maybe you can, but for a lot of guys, it's really hard to stop at making out because what making out does to your body is it starts to arouse it or wake it up and say to your body, hey, we're heading towards a destination, because that's the way that your body was designed. If you don't believe me, men, you know what I'm talking about. What happens to your body if you stop after you've told it, hey, we're heading towards a sexual act? Like, like there's a physical ramification of the action of waking up your body sexually and then stopping it. And so why would that be? And it's like, because the body wasn't designed to like start and stop. Like it's not healthy. And so your body's going to only want more and more for it to actually follow up in its design. And so that's what makes it harder and harder and harder. If you introduce making out, I mean, like into your relationship, it's like, man, you're just really, your body is going to be very confused. And like, you're putting your body through some pain that it was never intended to go through. And so it's like, is it really worth it? Like, is it really worth it? Can you really not wait until marriage? And if you can't, why? Is this an idol in your life? And so that is the norm. Most guys appreciate that advice and go, you're right. When it comes down to it, I just want a physical need met because it's fun and it makes me feel something, and I'm a sexually driven person, and it
makes me feel connected.
Right.
But then you can find connection also in other ways.
Totally. And so like, that's what it comes down to. But there's just some people that's like, no, like, here's the argument I get a lot with when I hear older men talk about this. They're like, if you say, well, no, we can make out and that doesn't happen to me and like, we're good. They'll be like, well, red flag. Like, why doesn't that happen to you if you're into this person?
Right.
And so it's like a catch-22 of like, why don't I want more? Yeah. And so again, to me, I have found, and people might be asking, do you make out, JD? Like, and I don't. Because I have personally found that it's not helpful for me to put my body through such confusion of why are you convincing me that this is about to happen and then shutting me down? Yes. And my body doesn't appreciate that. And it's just not, and I always find myself wanting to like, I want to do more. Yes. And so I've just told myself, I'd rather sacrifice now, something good now for a better, great later when it's in God's design. It lacks guilt and shame, and I'm walking and I'm honoring God's daughter, and it's like following what I believe.
It's in a safe place.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in a holy, sacred context.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not going to lie. I've made out with lots of guys that I've dated. And that's definitely been something for me that where my start of relationships, there's no kissing. I try my best to like, hey, not until I don't want to kiss at all until I know where I stand with you. But I'm not going to sit here also and say, you guys, that like I haven't made out with guys I've dated or haven't even in the last few years. Like, that would just be inauthentic of me to do that. So I'm just going to admit to that right now. Right. However, this is something I've openly talked about in the podcast. It's also something that I've had to recognize as a downfall for me and something I've had to work through. Like, I have found myself in the past getting too much validation through the physical connection. And having to go to honestly a ton of therapy to work out, why is it that I feel more connected or desire that connection of physicality? And that for me has been something where I've had to recognize some really sad tendencies or sad moments in my life that have created bad tendencies, you know? And so for me, I've had to do a lot of work, especially in the last few years, to figure out what my sexual desire is good. Then once I figure that out and debunk all the other things I thought about myself, my sexual desire, what men think of me, then how do I rebuild that to say, what is it that I really desire and why? And what do I also know about myself, my old tendencies, you know, that are still there, you know, those tendencies don't just disappear like if I've practiced them for so long. So that is definitely a journey that I would encourage people, if you've struggled with physical boundaries, like, go on that journey. It is a journey, but it's so important to figure out like, hey, why am I just constantly falling into like making out with people or craving physical intimacy when I date someone off the bat, or trying to set boundaries and never being able to follow them, you know? And that's not to say to create shame, just like lovingly and compassionately work that out with yourself and with God before you date. Because my biggest thing is in a relationship, when you're dating, you guys need to be on the exact same page. A lot of people enter a relationship and one person's on page 2 and the other person's on page 3, let's say.
Yep.
And I'm like, it will not work out. Like
Right.
you as the page 2 person will most likely end up going to page 3. That's likely what will happen. You guys both need to be on the exact same page about what it is you're doing moving forward.
Totally. And that's, I mean, and it, I would say again, I want to keep saying this, that's the man's job. Too many women have to fight for that clarity of, are we on the same page? And it's the man's job to lead and say, this is how I'm going to pursue you. These are our boundaries. And these are what I feel like we need to put in place to honor one another to the best of our ability in a way that honors God. Yeah. And so that's about all I have on this topic. I mean, I could go further and further, but I would say that's the main gist of like your goal in dating is to honor the other person well, because they are hopefully they are God's son or daughter. And a lot of times you have to ask yourself, man, is this physical need to meet my need? And I'm not even considering the other person. Yes. And that's not what truly caring for someone is. So.
Yes, I love that. Boom.
This show is part of the Converge Podcast Network.